I never imagined that moving into what looked like a picturesque, peaceful neighborhood would drop me into the center of a scandal. But life has a twisted sense of humor. My name is Derek Holloway, and I've been a paramedic for over 12 years. I've responded to every imaginable call, from routine falls to life and death trauma scenes, and always maintained my calm, my professionalism, and my sense of duty. But nothing, not a single night shift or code blue, prepared me for the woman known around Sunny Pines as Judith Manning, the president of the local HOA, and the most power-drunk civilian I've ever encountered. When I first moved into Sunny Pines 6 months ago, I was drawn to the manicured lawns, the tidy mailboxes, the uniform hedges, and the kind of suburban tranquility people dream about. It was a gated community just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, close enough to the city for work, far enough to breathe. I found a modest single-story house near the end of Brookwell Lane. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. I'd saved for years to put down roots. And for a while, it really did seem perfect. That illusion cracked the moment I met Judith. She introduced herself with the posture of royalty, chin up, tight smile, a clipboard clutched like a sword. "Welcome to Sunny Pines," she said on my move-in day. "We pride ourselves on our standards. Garbage bins must be retrieved by 7 p.m. on collection days. Lawn height is limited to 2.5 inches. All exterior alterations, including mailbox styles, must be submitted for approval through the HOA subcommittee." Her tone wasn't warm. It was rehearsed, like she'd said those lines 100 times and enjoyed every delivery. I nodded politely, a bit amused but not concerned. I had no idea this woman would soon wage war over my existence. The first violation notice came exactly 3 weeks after I moved in. It was about my work schedule. As a paramedic, I often work overnight shifts. Sometimes my vehicle isn't parked in my driveway, and apparently that was an issue. According to Judith, it violated a clause in the HOA agreement about consistent residential appearance. I didn't even know that was a thing. I let it go. The second violation came after a citywide emergency had me working 3 consecutive shifts. I came home to find my grass had grown maybe half an inch above regulation. This time, the notice included a photo and Judith's signature, with a tiny smiley face drawn next to it that felt more like a middle finger than a friendly reminder. I decided to handle things like an adult. At the next HOA meeting, I approached her directly and calmly. "Judith," I said, "I work as a first responder. Sometimes I'm on call for days. Is there any room for flexibility in enforcing these rules given the nature of my profession?" She blinked behind her designer glasses, cleared her throat dramatically, and said with saccharine superiority, "Rules are rules, Derek. If we make an exception for you, we'll have to make one for everyone. Perhaps this isn't the right community for someone with your lifestyle." The way she said lifestyle made it sound like I was hosting underground raves in my garage instead of saving lives. Still, I held back. I didn't raise my voice or lash out. I hired a landscaping service. I asked my neighbor to bring in my bins. I even repainted my front door, sacrificing a navy blue I loved for the HOA's approved misty teal. But Judith wasn't satisfied. Her letters kept coming. Her tone grew bolder. And I kept swallowing my frustration until the day she crossed a line no sane person would dare to. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in early spring. I was off duty for once, lounging in my backyard with a book and a cold glass of tea. I heard a scream, a sharp, panicked yell coming from the Johnsons' home next door. They were an older couple, kind folks who always waved. Without thinking, I vaulted the low fence and rushed over. I found Mr. Johnson lying unconscious on the patio. Pale, not breathing. "Call 911. I shouted at Mrs. Johnson as I dropped to my knees. Training kicked in. I checked his pulse, absent. I tilted his head back, started chest compressions. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Focused. Rhythmic. Everything else faded away. That's when I heard it, the voice I'd come to loathe. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Judith Manning stood at the edge of the patio, arms folded, her lavender cardigan pristine, a laminated booklet in her hand like it was the Constitution. Her voice was sharp, shrill, and entirely misplaced. "I'm performing CPR," I said between compressions, not even looking up. "Please step back." But Judith stepped closer. "This is a violation of Article 5, Paragraph 3 of our community bylaws," she announced. "No medical procedures are to be performed in public view. It disrupts the aesthetic tranquility of Sunny Pines." I nearly laughed. "He's dying, Judith." She didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this violation. As HOA president, I order you to cease this activity or face fines and disciplinary review. Still mid-compression, I warned, touch me or interfere, and I'll have you charged with obstruction of emergency services. Judith Manning didn't just ignore that warning, she escalated. She placed a hand on my shoulder and tried to physically pull me away. I shoved her off with a controlled motion, keeping my rhythm. Security, she hissed into her phone. Get over here now. We have an unauthorized individual performing medical activity on HOA grounds. Minutes later, 2 private security guards rolled up in their cart, both looking confused, even embarrassed, as they saw what was happening. I was doing chest compressions. Judith was standing over me, flailing her rule book. This man is violating our policies, she cried. One of the guards spoke quietly. Ma'am, it looks like he's helping. He is not a certified responder for Sunny Pines, Judith snapped. He's just a resident. Our bylaws require all emergencies be handled by approved emergency services only. I was still counting compressions when the Real help arrived, an ambulance pulled into the driveway, and my colleagues from EMS jumped out, stunned at the scene. What the hell is this? My supervisor, Rachel, demanded. This man's in cardiac arrest, I said. I've been doing compressions. Judith here tried to stop me. Rachel's expression went from puzzled to furious. You did what? She snapped at Judith. Judith, suddenly less confident, stammered something about community standards and tranquility. The security guards took a nervous step back. Rachel and her partner took over care. I stepped aside, sweat dripping from my forehead, my heart pounding with disbelief. They used the defibrillator. We got a pulse. Mr. Johnson was alive when we loaded him into the ambulance. But Judith wasn't finished. I want him arrested, she yelled. He violated HOA protocol and refused to comply with our security. Rachel stared at her like she was from another planet. The guards did nothing. As the ambulance pulled away, I stood alone with Judith and the guards. My adrenaline drained. My composure remained. But my patience was gone. You tried to stop emergency care, I said softly. You physically interfered. You called security on me while I was saving a man's life. Judith blinked, but that smug smile crept back. Our bylaws clearly. No, I cut in. State law clearly says interfering with emergency medical treatment is a criminal offense. HOA rules do not override that. And you, Judith, are about to find out exactly what that means. I pulled out my phone. The investigation moved quickly. Mrs. Johnson gave a statement. So did my EMS team. Judith's own video, the one she so proudly recorded, became key evidence. She was charged with obstruction, attempted assault, and filing a false report. The private security firm also came under review. But it didn't stop there. Mr. Johnson recovered, and when he found out what happened while he was unconscious, he filed a civil suit, not just against Judith, but the entire HOA. $5 million in damages. Emotional distress. Reckless endangerment. Legal malpractice. He had the best lawyers in the state. At the next HOA meeting, the mood was different. The room was packed. Judith sat at the front table, but no one looked her way. Her former allies avoided her eyes. The HOA attorney stood and delivered the news. The insurance wouldn't cover Judith's actions because they were intentional and malicious. Every homeowner could be financially liable unless Judith was removed from the board. The vote was unanimous. Even her closest allies turned their backs. When the criminal penalties were announced, $50,000 in fines and up to 3 years in prison, Judith went pale. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just sat, blinking, her hands trembling on the table. Her control was gone. Her empire of laminated bylaws and petty threats had crumbled in front of the very people she once ruled. And I, a paramedic just trying to live a quiet life, had brought it down by doing the only thing I was ever trained to do: save a life. The neighborhood changed after that. People were warmer. Kinder. A new HOA president was elected, a retired nurse named Maria, who rewrote the bylaws with actual compassion in mind. The HOA formally apologized to me in writing. Mr. Johnson made a full recovery and still waves at me every morning. I even got to repaint my front door in the exact shade of blue I originally wanted. But more than that, I got something deeper, the reminder that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular, matters. That standing up in the face of absurdity, calmly and with truth, can shake even the most rigid system. And as for Judith? Well, let's just say she's got plenty of time now to reread her HOA handbook, alone, in silence, in a place where the rules finally apply to her, too.